Late one humid night at Graceland, the corridors lay silent beneath the glow of a single hallway lamp. Behind a half-open door, Elvis Presley sat at the grand piano, in slippers and a worn pajama top, fingers hovering above ivory keys that reflected the dim light. The house had been quiet for weeks. No rehearsals, no impromptu jam sessions, only the distant hum of the air conditioning. Tonight, he played fragments of old gospel hymns and blues riffs, each chord revealing exhaustion he dared not voice. Down the hall, 9-year-old Lisa Marie drifted from her bed, slippers in hand. She crept barefoot past family photographs and trophy cases until she reached the piano room's doorway. For a moment, he did not notice her, his eyes closed as if communing with a memory too tender for words. Then she cleared her throat softly. He froze, one hand poised over a chord. Lisa Marie ducked inside, heart pounding. The faint scent of jasmine from her mother's perfume mixed with piano polish. She clutched her nightgown close, cheeks flushed from sneaking out of bed. "Daddy?" she ventured, voice small. Elvis opened his eyes, astonishment flickering across his face before smoothing into a gentle smile. She slid onto the bench beside him. I heard you playing." Her hands trembled as she placed them on the bench's edge. "I like that song." She sang a single tentative phrase. "Love me tender, love me sweet." Her voice wavered, thin yet pure. Elvis's chest tightened. He recognized the uneven rhythm, the hopeful pitch. It was as though Gladys's lullaby had found a new vessel. He tucked a stray curl behind Lisa Marie's ear and motioned to the keyboard. "Sit right here," he said softly. "Sing with me." They began together, hesitantly at first. Elvis guided her timing, his baritone wrapping around her fragile soprano. The room's shadows lengthened as they wove their voices into that old melody. Mid-verse, she stumbled, and he leaned close, murmuring, "That's all right, sweetheart." "Try again." She nodded, bracing herself against his warmth, then finished the line with a trembling confidence. When the last note faded into silence, an electric charge hung between them. Elvis closed the piano lid gently. He rested his hand on Lisa Marie's back and said, "You have a beautiful voice." She gazed up at him, eyes wide with wonder and relief. "I practiced when no one was listening," she admitted, "with a comb for a mic. I wanted you to hear me." Her words tumbled out, a child's earnest confession. Elvis sat back, tension easing from his shoulders. The ache in his chest softened, replaced by a familiar spark of inspiration. He stood and held out his hand. "Show me," he whispered. Together, they moved to the open window. The night air, cool against the summer heat, carried distant cicadas' song. In that quiet moment, father and daughter improvised new cadences, her small voice framed by his steady accompaniment. Far below, the mansion's rooms lay dark, unaware that behind one door, music was being reborn. In Lisa Marie's unwavering gaze, Elvis found a reason to revisit his passion, a reminder that even the most worn soul could be revived by another's voice. Their duet ended not with applause, but with the hushed promise of many more songs to come, shared in shadows, born of love, and held between them like a sacred secret. The hush in Graceland after midnight carried a weight as tangible as the humidity drifting through the open windows. Down long corridors hung portraits of Elvis Presley in his prime, young, daring, electrifying. Yet behind these walls, the man himself had grown weary of light and limelight. For weeks he'd skipped rehearsal invitations, postponed studio sessions, and retreated into solitude, where instruments gathered dust and his voice faded into memory. Tonight, only the grand piano in his private sitting room offered company. Elvis slid onto its bench, the leather groaning beneath him, and let his fingers drift across the keys in half-remembered fragments of gospel hymns he'd once sung in the fields near Tupelo. Each note carried the ache of his mother's lullabies, now distant echoes he could scarcely sustain. He closed his eyes, relinquishing the technique that had carried him to fame, preferring a raw communion with music's unspoken depths. Somewhere beyond the paneled door, a small footstep sounded. Lisa Marie, barely 9, paused, heart fluttering so fiercely her nightgown quivered. She'd crept from her bed, slippers dangling from one hand, determined to glimpse the father she knew only through headlines and rare smiles. The moonlight painted the hallway silver, and she followed its trail until she stood at the threshold of the piano room. Under the soft glow of a single lamp, Elvis's head bobbed in time with his playing, an unconscious sway of shoulders that betrayed both weariness and devotion. Lisa Marie's own breath caught in her throat as she watched him pour emotion into each chord. When he shifted to a minor progression, his eyes snapped open as if feeling her presence for the first time in days. "Daddy?" Her voice was a tremor, soft as a prayer. He froze, hands poised over the keys. The world he had built on stages and screaming fans dissolved into the hush between them. Then he smiled, a slow curve reborn from memory. "Hey there, baby," he murmured, lifting his gaze to meet hers. His voice was low, still tuneful even in exhaustion. Lisa Marie stepped forward, closing the distance. She perched on the piano bench beside him, careful not to topple the sheet music scattered at his side. I heard you playing," she explained, eyes bright with both fear and hope. "I've been practicing in my room." She slipped a comb from her pocket, a pale plastic relic of childhood, and held it like a microphone. "I sing when no one's awake." Elvis's heart clenched. He remembered his own timid voice as a child, hiding behind furniture, singing along to country stations in Tupelo. He lifted her small hand, comb and all, and placed it gently aside. "Tell me what you've learned," he said, reaching for the keys. Lisa Marie took a deep breath, tiny shoulders straightening. "Love Me Tender," she whispered. "It's my favorite." Before she could second guess, she began a single line, her voice thin, uncertain, but shining with earnest clarity. "Love me tender, love me true." Her pitch wavered, but each vowel rang bright as a bell. Elvis matched her tempo with a soft arpeggio, crafting his chord voicing around her melody as if framing a precious gem. He leaned forward, lowering his volume until his baritone was but a warm caress. "That's it," he encouraged, nodding in rhythm. "Again, sweetheart." She repeated the line, slower this time, ripping confidence from the tenderness of his accompaniment. Their voices mingled, her youth fused with his seasoned timbre, until he realized how deeply he had missed the simple communion of song, stripped of expectations and spotlights. When she finished, breathless, he closed the lid of the piano with a soft click. Silence reclaimed the room, but the energy between them thrummed like a living thing. Elvis set aside his glasses and gathered her small hands in his. "Lisa, that was beautiful," he said, pride smoothing the lines of his face. "You've got something real." Tears sprang in her eyes, though she tried to blink them away. "You really think so?" she asked. "Even if it's just me and a comb?" His grin broadened. "It's you and your heart. That's enough." He scooted aside, patting the bench to invite her fully between the keys. "Come on, let's try it together." She climbed onto the bench, slipping her small fingers alongside his on the scales. He guided her through another verse, but this time he let her lead, following her timing, her phrasing. In that moment, the weariness that had shadowed his life lifted, replaced by the spark of parental pride and a rediscovered flame of musical joy. Beyond the closed door, the night deepened. Inside, two voices, father and daughter, wove a tentative duet that banished loneliness and lit a path toward healing. And just like that, in the hush of Graceland's darkest hours, music reclaimed its power to bind hearts and give voice to souls that had almost forgotten how to sing. The dawn light slanted through Graceland's shutters as Elvis awoke with a lingering echo of piano resonance in his bones. He gingerly slipped from bed into slacks and a simple white shirt, determined to seize this morning's promise. Down the hall, the grand piano awaited, its surface still cool from the previous night's session with Lisa Marie. He paused at the doorway to the music room, watching his daughter cross the threshold with that same mixture of timidity and wonder in her eyes. "Good morning, Papa," she whispered, perching on the bench's edge in her pajamas. "Did you sleep well?" Elvis offered a tired smile. "Ready for another song?" Lisa Marie nodded, smoothing the folds of her gown. He opened the lid of the piano and lifted a sheet of music. "Love Me Tender," the lyric lines faintly under his fingertips. He glanced at her. "Shall we try that duet again? Maybe finish the whole thing?" Her eyes brightened. "Yes," she said, her small voice steady. He sat beside her and positioned his hands over the keys. Without a word, he began the familiar opening chords, soft and unhurried, allowing each note to bloom in the quiet room. She joined in on the first phrase, matching his timing. Her voice, still wavering, carried a purity that cut through his fatigue. He adjusted his accompaniment, wrapping each chord around her melody like a protective embrace. As they progressed into the second verse, her confidence grew. Her clear tones soared above the pattern he laid beneath her. At the song's bridge, where he had faltered before, he hesitated, then let her lead the melody. He simplified his left hand, giving her room to shine, and slipped into a hushed harmony on the upper register. Their voices intertwined in a way that transcended mere rehearsal. He, the world's most famous crooner; she, his novice daughter discovering strength in song. Unbeknownst to them, downstairs in the control room, the family's audio technician, Marcus, had drifted in to check on a faulty mic cable. He paused outside the music room, tools in hand, when he heard the piano's gentle rumble and the duet's blended timbres. Curious, and always ready to catch a candid moment, he clicked on the console's record button, routing the sound from the room's open doorway into the studio's banks of tape. Back in the music room, Lisa Marie stumbled over the final lines, and Elvis leaned forward in a sweeping gesture to steady her pace. "Hold that last note," he encouraged. "Let it ring." She inhaled deeply, then released a long, trembling, "Tender, tender, love me true," her voice quivering as the note faded. He released the final chord slowly, the resonance lingering in the morning hush. Panting with exhilaration, she turned to him, eyes shining. "We did it, Papa." Elvis nodded, pride warming his chest. "You were magnificent," he said, brushing a stray lock from her forehead. He rose and turned to the piano's back, intending to close the lid, but paused. "You know," he murmured, "I've been asking myself why I stopped loving music. Tonight, I found the answer." Before she could respond, a soft knock sounded. Marcus peered in, cheeks flushed. "Sir, apologies for interrupting," he said, voice deferential. I recorded that session this morning. Thought you'd want to hear the playback." Elvis exchanged a glance with Lisa Marie. She hopped down to Marcus's side. Together, they stepped into the control room, where the technician hurriedly rewound the tape. Elvis settled into a swivel chair as Marcus lowered the headphone cup onto his ear. Lisa Marie perched on the console's edge, leaning forward with rapt attention. When the duet emerged through the speakers, her voice, sweet and brave, entwined with his mature timbre, a hush fell over the trio. Elvis closed his eyes, letting the pure interlacing of his daughter's innocence and his own veteran warmth wash over him. He felt tears gather unbidden at the corners of his eyes as he heard the vulnerability and honesty in every phrase. When the tape ran silent, Lisa Marie turned to him. "Papa?" He rose, kneeled before her, and took her hands in his. "That," he said in a choked whisper, "is the truest music I have ever heard." He kissed her forehead. "We'll keep this safe, just for us." Marcus exhaled, swiftly stopping the recorder. Elvis placed his hand on the technician's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, voice strong despite the emotion. "That's a gift beyond measure." As they left the studio, the dawn sun poured through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in their wake. In that quiet hour, father and daughter found a harmony neither had known they were missing. An improvised duet that would live forever in the whispered melody between their hearts. The next morning, the soft glow of early sunlight crept through the tall windows of Graceland's music room, illuminating motes of dust that danced like impatient fireflies. Elvis Presley entered, shedding his robe for a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing the simple silver bracelet he wore for luck. On the polished mahogany floor, Lisa Marie sat cross-legged before the grand piano, humming the opening notes of "Love Me Tender" under her breath. Her comb lay discarded at her side, no longer needed. Elvis paused at the threshold, watching her quiet confidence. He cleared his throat softly. "Good morning," he said, voice low but steady. Lisa Marie looked up, her eyes brightening at the sight of her father. She patted the piano bench. "Want to try again?" she offered. He nodded and sat. The room felt vast and sacred, as if it held every note he'd ever sung and every note yet to come. Without discussion, Elvis raised his right hand, palm out, signaling a silent count-off. His left hand settled on middle C. Together they began. Lisa Marie's voice pure and tentative, his accompaniment rich and supportive. But this time, Elvis allowed himself to follow her lead. Whenever she hesitated, he smoothed the rhythm with a gentle roll of the left hand. When her tempo quickened with youthful enthusiasm, his right hand flourishes softened to match her pace, creating a seamless blend. Midway through the second verse, Lisa Marie glanced toward the control room door and frowned as if recalling something. "Daddy," she whispered mid-phrase, "I think someone is listening." Elvis continued playing, expression unreadable, while behind them the studio technician, Marcus, stood in the doorway, wide-eyed, motionless. Wires snaked around his feet, linking microphones to racks of glowing meters. He'd meant to step out, but was entranced by the father-daughter melding of voices. The tape machine clicked on its own, preserving every breathless note. When they reached the bridge, Elvis leaned forward, lowering his voice so they sang in harmony, a fragile duet where the adult voice cradled the child's. Lisa Marie closed her eyes, shoulder brushing his, emboldened by the intimacy. The finale rose in volume and emotion, a careful crescendo that left room for vulnerability, not bravado. They held the final chord together, elongating the word "true" until it quivered, then dissipated like a sigh. A silence followed. Marcus set down his clipboard and stepped into the room, removing his headphones. Elvis turned, wiping a bead of sweat from his temple, voice hoarse yet content. "Well done," he said simply. Lisa Marie beamed as Marcus approached. "I didn't mean to intrude," he apologized, "but this is remarkable. I couldn't help recording it." Elvis nodded, reaching into his shirt pocket and producing 2 blank tape sleeves. He handed one to Marcus. "Keep that for us," he said. "No one else needs to hear this." Then he placed the second sleeve in Lisa Marie's small hand. "And you," he added, "so you always remember this moment." Lisa Marie hugged the sleeve to her chest, gaze locked on her father. "Papa," she whispered, voice trembling. "I could sing forever like that." Elvis rose and ruffled her hair, smile touching the corners of his eyes. "And I'll be here, ready to listen." As the sun climbed higher, they packed up the room. Piano closed, chairs pushed back, microphones silenced. Yet in the quiet corners of Graceland, that improvised duet lingered, etched into the woodwork and held in the hearts of two people who discovered that their voices, interwoven, could heal more than loneliness. They could forge a legacy born of love,